Welcome everyone. I'm Fatima Venzer, and on behalf of the UC Santa Barbara Economic Forecast Project team, I'd like to welcome you to the 5th installation of EFP Informs. The Economic Forecast Project is a UC Santa Barbara community-sponsored research department, and this webinar series is made possible by EFP's generous sponsors. We especially want to recognize our founding partner, Union Bank, and our platinum sponsor, Montecito Bank and Trust. Both Union Bank and Montecito Bank and Trust have been supporters of EFP since its beginning in 1981. Additionally, we'd like to thank our lead sponsors, American Riviera Bank, UC Santa Barbara Alumni, Bank of America, County of Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara Foundation, Hilton, Pacific Premier Bank, and Cottage Health. Lastly, to our donors, the Gretler Foundation, the Hutton Parker Foundation, and the Mosier Foundation. To all of our supporters, we send a sincere thank you. Just a reminder, our webinar today is being recorded and it will be available to watch next week on the UCSB website, efp.ucsb.edu. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we'd just like to let you know that we have disabled a number of the webinar features for security purposes. So particularly attendees cannot turn on their microphone or their camera, nor can they chat with one another. Throughout the discussion though, we do encourage you to submit your questions for our panelists, and you can do that using the Q&A box, which can be found either at the top or the bottom of your screen. And Charlie, who most of you will recognize from previous webinars, he'll be moderating those questions and answers. Charlie is a senior research analyst for EFP and also a PhD student of economics at UC Santa Barbara. Okay, and so now I'd like to introduce the executive director of the UC Santa Barbara Economic Forecast Project and professor of economics, Dr. Peter Rupert.
Great, thank you very much, Fatima. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Good, okay. So now I'm going to share my screen. Welcome everybody, and again, thanks to our sponsors. There's going to be an update on residential real estate. We did a webinar a couple weeks ago on commercial real estate, and I think we heard a little bit of doom and gloom in some areas, some positive spots. So it turns out, there's still lots of turmoil and uncertainty out there. Medically, we're in purple. I didn't even know we had purple, but we're in purple, unfortunately. Which basically means that many of the businesses and events that we'd like to all attend are semi shut down. Economically, we're also, we're trying to recover. It's been hard. Obviously, there are many sectors that are doing very poorly. Other sectors doing better. And so what we really want to know, is the virus under control? The verdict's still out on that. I mean, they're searching hard for a vaccine with some success. Our numbers have been falling, but kind of going up and down, much like an economy does from time to time. And the economy is not really under control either, in lots of ways. It seems to be getting better. In terms of residential real estate, it kind of seems immune to the virus. Now, what I want to caution people on is sort of how we think about looking at data, and we're very fortunate to have our three speakers who are really on the front lines. And I joke that usually economists, they wait for a month for the employment report to come out, or a quarter for the GDP report to come out, and other than that, they just sit around doing nothing, I think. And now, however, everyone's getting calls daily. What's the daily number? What's the daily number of cases? What's the daily number of real estate sales? And these three today, Karen Shackle, Renee Grubb, and George Lees, are those people who are seeing this every day. And so we're very fortunate to have them. And what I have on the slide is I just want to be very careful when people are looking at data, because given COVID, things have gone, pretty much amok. And the data is very, very hard to understand. So this comes from the National Association of Realtors. This is total existing home sales. And total existing home sales, you can see that, you know, it just kind of been, this is for the US, has been tracking along, you know, 5.5 million, something like that. But I want you to notice what's up at the top. It says total existing home sales, and it says SA for seasonally adjusted. And then it says annual rate. So many people are like, you know, why are you doing this? You know, why are you seasonally adjusting and why at an annual rate? The annual rate to me is still a bit of a puzzle. And the reason I say that is, you know, what it means at an annual rate, it means if basically the same thing happened over the next 12 months as happening now, this is what the number would be. But obviously in such a strange time, and you can see back here, over here in 2020, this is a strange time. We've never seen anything like that particular drop. And here's my own picture of that. And again, you can see up here, it does say seasonally adjusted at an annual rate. And that's that same picture I just delivered. Note a couple of things. One is, you know, we weren't really shut down until March, middle of March. The existing home sales data had already started to fall. The blue line, the blue color, the shaded area, that's a recession. The Federal Reserve, National Bureau of Economic Research called a recession back in February of 2002. Things had already started to slip a little bit before even we shut down. So again, this is seasonally adjusted annual rate data. This is just not seasonally adjusted data. This is just the raw data, not seasonally adjusted, not at an annual rate. And the point is that, you know, we know, and you know, everyone knows that real estate sales typically fall towards the end of the year into November, December, January, and then typically pick back up. So the difference between the last slide, the seasonally adjusted, you can see there was a huge dip right at the beginning of the recession, and now we're back higher than we were during that time period. If you look at just the raw numbers, you can see the same kind of idea that given that it was slow in December and January as usual, you know, we're now up by more than we have been in a long time. These are housing starts. It came out today. The housing starts numbers fell a little bit. This is not seasonally adjusted. You can see how wacky it looks when it's not seasonally adjusted. And the report today, even though it fell a little bit, it was a pretty solid report for the housing overall. Most of the decline that we saw was in multiple family housing, not in single family residences. And this is what I meant by it's kind of immune. This is the median sale price by city. Our speakers say you're going to get more into this, obviously, but you know, if you took a look at this picture and you look at the blue bar again, where that's simply the recession back in 2008, and you just move ahead, you wouldn't see anything. You don't see a recession. You don't see, in terms of prices, you don't see COVID. You see very, very little. There's been a trend up. That trend hasn't really slowed down. And so, look, the economy's in recovery mode. Is residential real estate really immune to this? You know, I'm not a forecaster, but we have three people who I think are going to be able to talk a little bit about this. And I will now turn that over to our next speaker.
Hi.
It's going to be Karen, and we're going to get the screen up there. Karen Shackle, most of you know, is Vice President and the County Manager of First American Title. And she's the one who, when housing sales go through, Karen knows about it. So Karen, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. And thank you to the EFP for allowing me to speak today. I feel a little conflicted because we're so busy, and I acknowledge that there are so many industries that are suffering. So I honestly have not seen this kind of boom, instant boom, since 2005 in our market, and it's all aspects of our market. I'm going to keep it very local because, and then Renee will dive down into the more specifics of South County and Georgia, and to the more specifics of lending. Peter asked me to kind of tell me, in my industry, what was the first reaction to COVID. And in mid-March, we were given the directive to send 70% of our staff across the country home and work remotely. most of us had laptops, but we deployed 10,000 laptops across the country and had to be up and running like the next day. It actually went pretty well. But since I started in this business in '79, you know, like many of you, we've seen multiple recessions due to the stock market or fires or disasters, but obviously never a pandemic. And in all the recessions I've been through, I've never seen an instant stop to the market. We actually lost 50% of all of our transactions that were in the pipeline. So that was pretty horrific. And all I could see on the horizon was, here we go, massive, you know, layoffs in all aspects of the industry. So fortunately, our company did put a moratorium for 90 days on layoffs. And as we were getting closer, we were all getting a little worried because it really was March, April, and May. And come towards the end of May, it just boomed. It was like somebody turned on the faucet. Anyway, some of the difficulties or the effects of COVID was in the title and escrow aspect of my business. We still need to touch paper. Sellers need to sign their grant deed in front of a notary, and buyers need to sign their loan documents, and notaries didn't want to see people, and people didn't want to see notaries. So we were at a standstill trying to figure out how we can continue to close these transactions. People were obviously really scared. One of the things we did as an industry is we lobbied to the governor to pass RON signings. They're remote online notaries, and in many states they do that, where you don't have to appear in front of somebody to execute documents. But obviously the governor had more things at hand, and that did not happen. And slowly things settled down, and we started signing our clients, and our notaries were signing them on hoods of cars and park benches. It was quite interesting, but we got through it and started closing transactions again. Some of the other challenges are a lot of people that buy, particularly in the South County, are foreigners or people that travel. You know, this is a destination place and people are in other countries, and it's a no-brainer. We send them to an embassy, they see a consulate, and they get notarized, and it's pretty seamless. But obviously, as you know, COVID hit other countries before it hit us, and we had people that could not get in front of a consulate to close these transactions. And it's not just usually one transaction, there are multiple transactions. So I think partly that's why we saw such a huge amount of fallout, because it isn't just a buy and a sell, it's many concurrent closings. One of the things that I have to applaud our local municipalities, our county recorder did not miss one day of recording. They recorded from their homes, they shut down to the public, but we did not have any hiccups here locally. As other counties, because we do transactions, all the title companies do outside of the area, we would get a notification the night before and say, for instance, Monterey would be shut down for 2 days. So if you could imagine having 5 or 6 transactions, but your middle transaction can't record because a county due to COVID was shut down. So that was quite interesting. The numbers that I'm going to show you are the whole county again, and I think the next slide will be showing the refinance market. And when you look at these numbers, you can only imagine how inundated, not just title and escrow, realtors, appraisers, inspectors, loan officers, it's been really it's intense compared to anything I've ever seen. So you can see all my numbers are January through August, 19 versus 20. We were already in a refi boom in 2020. We were already doubling our numbers. As we got through the year, obviously our purchase market in March, April, and May went dormant, but the refinances did not stop. North County sales, I again compared 2019 to 2020. And the only area that actually we're catching up now, and please mind you that these are recorded numbers through August. So what we have in the pipeline and pending, Renee will share with you. I'm sure by September, October, we will exceed the 2019 numbers. And 2019 was one of the best purchase years in real estate for our area that I had seen in over 10 years. So So we're coming off a boom year, and I believe by the recorded transactions, September, October, we're going to exceed that. One of the areas, though, that succeeded 2019 was the San Ynez Valley, and I don't know if Renee is going to speak to it too, but we've got a lot of people coming from all over living in the valley now. The other interesting slide here is our new homes. Our new homes, it doesn't look like a ton, since 19 to 20. I will tell you, though, there are parts of the county, one I want to highlight, Pasadena, Guadalupe, the largest subdivision I've ever seen, 800 homes. We have 500 left to sell, but they're averaging about 15 closings a month, which is huge. The next slide that I want to show you is just overall South County. Again, we're not quite caught up with 2019. These are recorded numbers. That'll change in the next 2 months. The next slide here is the South County new homes. And this was the one that concerns me, or I don't really know what to say about it, but I've never seen in 2016, probably to mid-16 through 19, in the South County alone, we closed over 1,000 new homes. Most of those were entry level. So that's a wonderful thing. We had a lot of people. It was the first time in 15 years I saw young couples in the lobby being able to buy their first home. And out of those were, the next slide will show you our new home development list that we keep updated on a regular basis. But in the South County alone, if you think about that, Village at Los Caneros was 321 new homes, Christmas Tree Farm 133, Winslow 175. Most all of them are closed. Estancias has a few left. But Village, Tree Farm, Winslow, they're pretty much entry level. So I don't know, Peter, later maybe we could talk about what that means. I don't see any starts in the pipeline. There's a couple projects in Lompoc that are approved, but other than that, in the South, I don't see a ton of new starts. And remember, the entitlement process, getting through, the municipalities, I mean, it's 3 to 5 years. So I just, on a note, I don't see that. I'd love to see it, but we don't see a lot. Lastly, one of the things, and I know George and I talked, and he's going to talk more about this, is foreclosures. So we all know that there's a lot of people that have taken advantage of the forbearance, particularly in the FHA government loans. In over 3 decades, we have not seen this type of increase, 16% up from 9.7% of all transactions from the beginning of the year are delinquent. Now, we're not seeing that because typically you're delinquent on your mortgage and the lender will start the proceedings after 30 days and the whole process takes 120 days. Well, with the forbearance, which was initially 6 months, and I think they've had 2 extensions, again, we don't see the data, but we know from the associations, the mortgage banking associations, that they're out there. Some in the know say that we're not going to see foreclosures because there's so much more equity than there was in 2009 and 2010. So I'm going with that. I'm reading that one. Lastly, I wanted to talk about, I ran into Harry Hagan of our tax collector's office, and I thought, well, with all of that in the mortgage industry, were people paying their property taxes? And surprisingly, he mentioned that there was only less than 1% of people that were delinquent in their property taxes. But with that in mind, the tax collectors were given an executive order from our governor to give a delinquency waiver. And currently we have about 1,000 people in the county that have taken advantage of that waiver. So that's another good thing. Anyway, I appreciate being here, and we'll talk to you in a bit. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Karen. That's great stuff. Now I'd like to introduce Renee Grove, who probably everybody knows, real estate broker and owner of Village Properties. Renee, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Peter. And again, thank you all for inviting me to talk about residential real estate. Just like Karen and probably George, we can talk about this all day long, but I decided to sort of put together a little story in regards to when the pandemic first hit and the real estate response to that. So as Peter mentioned, the governor's office pretty much closed everybody down. The shelter at home on March 16th or so, or the week of March 16th. At that time, real estate was categorized as non-essential. But lucky for us, and I do, you know, I feel the same way as Karen does about those that haven't been as fortunate as real estate. But on March the 28th, we could show property on a one-to-one basis, and obviously with hand sanitizer, at the time gloves, and masks, of course. And we wasn't sure about the booties, but we had booties on hand for showing property. Everyone at that time, just like every industry, there was a fear of the virus. And so, as Karen mentioned, a lot of escrows were falling out of escrow. A lot of properties were falling out of escrow. A lot of sellers were pulling their houses off the market as well. Buyers were concerned about, you know, looking at property, and sellers were concerned about having strangers in their home. But I must say that during that particular time, we did have a lot of direction. We had a lot of guidelines that we were receiving pretty much on a seemed like every other day basis. The governor's office was working on it, and I would say for probably about 6 weeks, we had changes weekly. And so at that particular time, our job was to try to make the buyers and the sellers feel more comfortable going into properties, and knowing that we were doing all the governor's guidelines and all the protocols in place. So also important fact was that since we did not know what this was going to, you know, what the outcome was going to be with real estate, and whether this was going to be another, you know, recession for real estate, even though we didn't cause it. I think that's important to know. CAR was lobbying, NAR was National Association, and California Association were lobbying heavily for independent contractors to receive unemployment. And that's kind of a side note, but it was kind of reassuring for our agents to know, all the agents to know that, you know, they had someone kind of rallying for them. So during the first couple weeks that we were able to conduct business, we, you know, wanted to make sure that everybody was sort of on the same page. And so there was a lot of communication going on between the other managers within the community, just so that we were all, you know, sort of going according to the guidelines. So I think that was obviously a good thing. You know, we're competitors, but we were pulling together. For Village, we had our very first Zoom meeting, and one funny thing about the Zoom meetings is that I have never had a better audience or a number of agents that are on the Zoom meetings than I ever did in person. So obviously staying in your pajamas is kind of a good way to start the day. So our agents at this point in time have our protocol, our guidelines have really not changed. We have not had any loosening up of being able to, you know, do open houses or anything. We are pretty much doing what we did at the beginning, we're doing now. So I think that it's important for everyone to know that, you know, we're continuing to do all the proper things out there to show property. I don't know what happened to and why, you know, real estate became so essential to everyone, but we're certainly grateful for it. The one thing we did have to shift from was from paper to digital. And fortunately, you know, we have been moving into the digital world in real estate. So it wasn't as difficult of a transition for us since we can write the offers online. We can DocuSign them, and then most of us have a paperless system that we just shoot them into that system as well. So that's been, you know, like I said, a pretty good thing. The other thing that I think has come out of this is that we don't really have the tire kickers, as you would say, or the looky-loos anymore. We have a lot of buyers that, sellers that are requiring that the buyer have pre-approval before they even show their house. And that's primarily on the high end, but we're seeing it everywhere. You know, people don't want everybody running through their house if they're not qualified to buy. So I think that that's probably a positive thing for the real estate industry, for that sort of thing has come out. We, as I mentioned before, we have 9 forms that we have to get signed and taken care of before we can have the process of even showing property. And I think we've done a really good job of adjusting to those, although I must say it was pretty confusing and chaotic at the beginning. So just to go into a little bit of what we started to see in the way of sales, I would say that by May and June, the market was starting to become more active. And that was mainly fueled by people who were trying to get out of the big cities. But again, this was sort of sporadic from week to week and depending on the price point. Beginning of June, we were finally allowed to open our offices, and we did so. I think we're all pretty much open now. Agents cannot come in and out. They can't come and just work out of the office. They actually have to have an essential reason for coming in. So a little bit of my overview, and you can see the first graph is up here. You can see where these are homes and plan unit developments, and it's month to month. So a year ago in August, we had 107 closings in the month of August, and you can see as we move forward, for some reason, December of last year was a good year. I remember that. And we actually thought that the market was going to sort of continue from December, but a lot of closings there. But you can see that they've dropped down, and by June, they've started to climb up. The next slide is our condominiums, and same sort of progression. So the total number of homes and condominiums that closed in the month of August is 212, as compared to the lower numbers for condos and homes. Slide number 3 is our medium sales price, and those you can see in homes and plan unit developments, it's crazy. The month of July, which by the way had the most sales during these months that we've been tracking it since March, you can see that the median price was $1,733,000. It's just, you know, and that and the month of August are truly due to the high end. We are seeing so many sales all across, you know, a lot in Montecito, but we're starting to see them everywhere. Hope Ranch, Upper East, anywhere where there's, you know, a home that it has all the amenities for that person that is looking for, you know, every feature there is in a home. Also, of course, our beaches, our homes on the beaches are amazing. Condominiums, not so much of a change. And I would say that's because, you know, there just aren't as many condominiums in Santa Barbara to choose from. So the numbers do not fluctuate quite as much as far as the price range. So the last slide is showing you our inventory, or I would have to say our lack of inventory. And so you can see here we're down to 240 listings. Someone reported to me that we had 2 weeks of listings come on the market, and within 2 days, something like 6 or 7 of them were already in escrow. So that's the kind of activity that we're seeing out there, and it's hard to keep up with, to be honest with you. Like Peter said, you know, you have to look at it on a daily basis and figure out what's happening next. Condominiums, you know, they started to actually climb back in May, and I think the number for August here is a little low. Because of lack of inventory. You know, that's a lot of times the entry level pricing for first time buyers. So we're seeing that. So I would have to say that the number of homes is just going to continue to decline, as well as condos. So sort of in conclusion, and then I actually have a quote from our CAR economic forecast, our Leslie Appleton Young, that she just sent out this morning. But what I think is important for everybody to know is that we're having sales across the board. I mean, it's kind of interesting when you know, sometimes the dialogue is, oh my goodness, I never thought that house would ever sell. Well, it is. It's selling, and we're seeing a lot of that. And it's interesting, though. I wouldn't say that, you know, we are having a lot of multiple offers, but we're not having, you know, crazy prices. Occasionally, you'll hear about some home that goes way over asking, but we're not seeing as much of that as I would think we would. So Montecito, just talk a little bit about Montecito real quick, has the largest increase of sales in any other area right now, the largest over last year. So right now, the month of August, we had 44 closings, whereas a year ago we had 14. For the same period of time. We're often, one thing I thought I would touch on is that we're often asked where the buyers are coming from. And I did a little survey. I actually went back to March 28th. And what I came up with was we have, other than our local buyers, which is the top number, we have most of our buyers coming from Los Angeles. Then we have San Francisco. And then we start with out-of-state buyers, and most of those are from New York, Chicago, Washington State, surprisingly, New Jersey, and Texas and Arizona. And we've always had Texas that loves us, but we're usually a second home for them. And a lot of these homes are second homes for especially in the Montecito market. So I'm just going to read you what Leslie Appleton Young had to say this morning. She said, the housing, this is for all of California, of course, she predicts for all of California. The housing rebound continued in August as sales soared from last year. Existing single-family homes increased by double digits as rates dipped to an all-time low levels. And due to the tight inventory and surging luxury segment, the statewide median price set a new record, surpassing $700,000. I can remember when it was in the 200s, and that wasn't that long ago. For the first time in recorded history. Unfortunately, she's an economist. Sorry, Peter. She always has an unfortunately. Unfortunately, strong price growth more than offset falling rates in August as affordability contracted for the first time in more than a year. So kind of what Karen was talking about, I think we have a real concern for affordability in Santa Barbara. It's always been there, but if we don't have, new homes coming on the market, it just becomes a wider gap. And so she said that there are less than half as many active listings on the market in California in August as there were in August 2019. So that's where the affordability is going to really hit us, is just the lack of inventory. Now, some of our seasoned agents predict our market will continue to do well, especially on the high end. And the reason that they say that are three reasons. Our prices, believe it or not, are still very competitive to most high-end markets. So they come here, they see us, they find that we're actually priced well and a good value. We are a safe location, relatively low COVID cases compared to some of the areas that they're coming from. And obviously we're a coastal area and we're beautiful Santa Barbara. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Renee. Just one quick question that somebody had. Are those numbers that you were giving for sales and listings, mostly for sales, is that just for Village or is that for the count?
Sorry, that's the entire MLS, multiple listing service. Yes, no, the entire MLS.
Okay, yeah, someone had asked that. Okay, great, thanks again. Now I'd like to introduce George Lease. He's the President and Chief Operating Officer of Montecito Bank and Trust. Welcome, George.
Thank you, Peter, and thank the Economic Forecast for the ability for me to speak. I thought since I was following Renee, I might just talk a little bit about some consumer preferences that I was made aware of when I called our systems provider, Fiserv, the other day. So first thing that I wanted to maybe share is just the incredible growth in the building materials and garden supply post March 9th. I know I have remodeled my backyard extensively during the crisis, and apparently I am not alone. Building materials, garden supply, really doing incredibly well. Next slide. Furniture sales post-COVID, as my daughter moved back home, had to furnish a classroom, 2 classrooms in my house. I contributed to that uphill spike on furniture personally. Next slide. And electronics and appliances, of course, that furniture required a new computer be acquired. So I think all of those trends are interesting, and I think all of them probably have some effect, Peter, in the stimulus that was generated. Last slide, to Renee's point, I asked if I could get the Zillow inventory for the entire country, and you could see, inventory drying up like Renee spoke about in her last comments. The impacts of COVID on Montecito Bank and Trust. Oh my God, what unbelievable. In March, we pivoted as a company. We swung our resources to do PPP lending, 2,000 PPP loans, over $200 million in that program. And in our mortgage division in particular, we were faced with the reality that we could not work at work anymore. So we had to pivot and move out and work remotely. During the early stage, no, I'm not quite done there yet. During the early stages of that pandemic, thanks. Couple of things I just wanted to some of the challenges I think Karen and Renee talked about. We couldn't get an appraiser, right? The appraisers they didn't want to go into somebody's house. They had a stay-at-home order. In addition, for clients and borrowers in the early stage of that pandemic, loan options were very limited. Many of the large national banks got out of the HELOC business. Jumbo loans dried up. Restrictions on cash out refinances and restrictions on investment properties were really significant. Go ahead now, next slide. But fast forward to today, like Renee and Karen, we are experiencing record growth in our mortgage department. Some of this is absolutely contributed to the extraordinarily low interest rates. 30-year fixed rate loans in the secondary market can be had for as low as 2.5 to 3. At our bank, you can get an adjustable rate mortgage on our bank's portfolio from the high 2s to the mid 3s. The new conforming balance limits for Freddie and Fannie are $713,000 in Ventura County and $625,000 here in Santa Barbara County. Just a point of reference, so far this year we have funded more than 80 loans. We have 44 loans in our pipeline. And for us, we're anticipating closing 125 mortgages, which for Montecito Bank and Trust is a record. On the next slide, please. Just a summary of our bank's mortgage portfolio over the last couple of years, and you can see the trends are positive and growing in every single area, whether it's number of loans, commitment amounts, and principal balance. Next slide. This is the one I wanted to spend a little. Time on, just because I made the argument to Peter and maybe to Karen and Renee that the Central Coast might be a little different than the rest of the country. This shows graphically the mortgage deferments by product type that we engaged in at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. In March, the little green bar, we had by the way, we just offered anybody who asked for a deferment, we gave them a deferment. And we had a few takers in March, but in April, we had quite a number of our residential mortgage clients ask for a deferment. That trend continued in May. It slowed down into July. And as of today, we have no loans that are on deferment any longer. All of those loans that were on deferment have started paying again. So that's an interesting statistic. We're not a Fannie or Freddie or an FHA lender. We underwrite every one of our mortgages for our portfolio, but I think that's a promising trend that I wanted to show the audience here. The next slide. I also wanted just to put in for anyone who is impacted, and since this will be rebroadcast over a period of time, some additional resources if any of the clients that or the audience needs assistance. Here are some resources for them to avail themselves of. Next slide. And if you're not if your loan isn't federally backed, your borrower, any borrower should always contact their lender if they need financial assistance. Next slide. Now, I wanted to ask our panelists just one not COVID-19 related question. Given that we had a life-changing mud flow here in Montecito, I'm wondering if there has been any issues that Karen or Renee have seen related to hydrology or I just outlined a straw man scenario here. If a client applied for a loan and that appraisal came back with a recommendation for a hydrology report, I was wondering if you guys have heard anything, or has the mud flow really not been an issue for Montecito. So I'll throw that out as a question and conclude my comments, Peter. By the way, best bank mortgage company 2 years in a row, Peter. Hopefully we're going to get a third one. So just wanted to shout that out. So just curious about the mud flow, if there's been any, if you guys have had any issues with that.
You know,
Great, thanks,
I'll
George.
just briefly.
Go ahead, Karen.
I would just say that, well, I would just say the only issue that we saw, and we really didn't see much because everything went to a standstill for quite some time in Montecito, but was if they wanted a certain type of title insurance that would guarantee boundary lines and extended policy, we had an issue with that until things got settled and we worked with the county to establish boundary lines. Other than that, we don't really get involved in any geological or anything, but Renee might have more on that.
Well, again, number one, when we're selling these properties, we typically like a new survey. So, we encourage everyone to either have the seller do it before he puts it on the market, or if not, then the buyer have a survey done. But, I would have to say that, if the house has been already repaired, they did it properly, and we're not having any issues. They've obviously done all the proper, drainage and things like that. But I have to, which I mentioned to all of you earlier, we have more inspections done than any other properties. We get every single inspection you can think of under the sun for those properties, and our disclosures are pretty thick, and we love when, believe it or not, we actually love it when an attorney is involved so he can look over all of the disclosures. But I have to say, they're selling just fine. They're selling just fine. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good question, George. Now I'll turn over to Charlie, who has been scouring through the questions. Charlie?
Yeah, so thank you for inviting me to be the question master today, and welcome to all the attendees who are here. So I think we should start off on a topic that I think all three of you have sort of touched on. A number of you have identified the fact that material building costs have increased, sometimes substantially. And we're just wondering how much of that increase in the building costs are being passed through to, say, final home buyers.
I'll take a stab at this because, we have a construction lending department here at the bank, and, we see regularly, we get regular updates on the progress of those construction loans. And it's a caution, by the way, we tell our borrowers, that given, just given those slides I showed in the beginning, just demand on lumber, the biggest increases we've seen in the construction lending have been in lumber, concrete, and rebar and steel, right? That have been extraordinary. I know that we were talking beforehand. I know Karen had an example, I think, of a client that she was dealing with, and it's big, and it's happening as the loan is, as the construction loan is progressing. If they didn't buy the materials forward, they're absorbing those increases kind of real time. It's significant.
Yeah. I'd have to agree. I mean, if the developers haven't owned the land just in the whole building process for quite some time, I think that partly is why we might not see a lot in the entitlement process. Everything has gotten so costly, they have to pass it on to the consumer. I mean, the margins, if they didn't, they would be horrible. So not only the building cost, but just the land cost and all of the entitlement process has gotten pretty expensive. Yeah.
I would say from our perspective, when we're selling a home and let's say it needs to be remodeled, or someone wants to add some square footage to it, it depending on the area, depending on the quality that the buyer is looking for to remodel, you're quoting between 800 and all the way up to 2,000 a square feet. It's crazy. So, and that's because of, I'm sure, because of the building costs and the finishings and things like that. But but they do their research before.
So we have another question from an attendee, which, some of you have already touched on parts of their question. So I'll just ask the pieces that haven't been touched on yet. So you've already kind of mentioned that we have an idea of where some of our home buyers are coming, and it seems like a fair number of them are coming from out of state, according to some of Renee's statistics. So do we have any sense of how this inflow of home buyers might correlate with our local labor market? And I could throw that to Renee and I suppose Peter.
So so a lot of these buyers, there's a story behind a lot of buyers, is that it's like, why are you buying now in particular? And yes, it is to get out of the city. A lot of people were already thinking about Santa Barbara. They just hadn't quite, made the move or the inquiry, let's say. And so I think a lot of what's happening, down south, although their market is very good too, it's more of a quality of life. So a lot of people are actually buying homes and we're having to find renters for them. Or on the high end, they're buying homes and they'll just come up when they can, and they still have their homes in different areas, Los Angeles or San Francisco, and especially on the East Coast. That seems to be what's happening. So I don't know, and these are people that can work from anywhere, I would say, primarily. And when we talk about the, goodness, I hate to even say lower end, but anything under $1 million, most of those people are working here, but even they can work out of their houses. I don't know if I answered your question. Peter will probably do a better job at that, but from my perspective.
No, that's a hard question. I think there is some mobility, that labor is moving in, especially in some areas like the tech sector. We're starting to see a lot there. So I think that's fueled some of it. And I think a lot of people will work remotely. Do I think it's going to last forever? I actually don't think so. I think that being in the office, is actually a fairly important thing. So I think that this will last for a while. People that can work remotely pretty easily will do so. I'm not thinking it's going to be, it's really going to shift the needle, I don't think, in terms of real estate.
Sure. So we have another question here from Seth, and Seth asks, or points out rather, that during the previous recession, our local housing market, in fact, seemed to react more slowly to the housing collapse than other markets nationally. So should we expect something similar to happen with COVID-19? Now, we haven't seen too much movement downwards yet, but should we expect something like that on the horizon?
If there is a second wave of the pandemic, yes. I mean, I think that's a caution that we're at the bank, we're thinking about. Our underwriting. I think we're looking at all of our lending philosophies right now with a really intense lens on every. This is not a time for a local community bank to take any undue risk. So I think it's on our minds for sure. Absolutely. The trends that I showed in our mortgage division, though, seem to show that, maybe to Peter's point, that, single-family residential mortgage is either, there is a huge lag. We were talking about this in the waiting room before we had our call. Or there's a lot of well-heeled, strong buyers, and this market is a little different. I'm not sure which it is, but it's a concern I have for sure.
I mean, for me, I just have to go back to lack of inventory. We're just not gonna see more. There's just so many houses, and So one other aspect of that is that, you know, maybe I'm thinking about selling my house, just that I want a change or a downsize, but where am I going to go? You know, I gotta have a place to go. So I think that's going to be I think inventory, and for sure California there, yeah, and the nation. I don't think we're going to slow down in regards to desire or your want of people wanting to be here. I think it's just that they're not going to be able to find what they want.
You know, one thing I wanted to share that we see in previous recessions is when your 40-year-old tract house in Goleta gets to be well over $1 million. We have alternatives for first-time buyers. You start seeing them go over to the North County, and we're starting to see that already. And that's kind of a normal and a good attrition that they can go over, they can buy, they can build some equity slower. They want to come back to the South, they do, or people, Buellton and that North County area is becoming more and more desirable, and you're seeing people move to that can't afford the South. They're moving to Lompoc and they're moving to Santa Maria. So, I mean, that is also an option.
Mortgage underwriting standards are tighter. There's no and the amount of speculative real estate isn't like it was in 2008.
Right.
And all that speculative construction isn't out there. So that's another thing I look at.
Sure. So, all of us in California, at least, are living through some pretty serious fires. And so a number of our attendees are wondering how the current state of California fires might impact both insurance markets and housing and or rental markets.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're gonna probably see another because we're in California, we're gonna see another pulling out of insurance companies. It's interesting because it was just starting to settle down, and we weren't getting these astronomical quotes. But that's funny. One of my agents called me just this morning and said, "Where in the purchase agreement does it talk about that the buyer has a right to investigate their insurance?" And I'm like, yeah, paragraph 12. I mean, I know where that is. And we have to protect we have to protect buyers that they can get insurance. So even today, we make sure that that's one of the first things that we take care of. But it's definitely, this is not good.
So, Peter, I know in conversations that you and I have had, you've started to think a little bit about how we might be able to solve the homelessness problem in Santa Barbara. And while not exactly the same thing, one of our attendees, Rob, asks if you might have, or anyone else on the panel, might have some recommendations on how to address some of the affordability issues we have in Santa Barbara County, while still maintaining, our quality of life and being sensitive to the impact on traffic and commutes.
That's a good question. I think that Karen raised some of it. I think that there are some economics papers out there, by the way, and maybe you guys have seen this, that I know everybody has a huge desire just to build, what they call affordable housing. Which, by the way, is still under regulations, and it's not like you can just throw up a shack and have people move in there. And the papers basically say things like you can almost build at any level, and it trickles down as people move up into these newer homes that they like. That then these older homes become more affordable. So a lot of people say that we should just build affordable housing. I think that building it all in all price ranges actually helps on the affordable housing side of things. In terms of homelessness, obviously a hard problem. Individuals who are who've lost their jobs or out of their homes, who need mental health. All those things need certainly to be addressed. And getting a facility in Santa Barbara somewhere, I think would go a long way.
Yeah, so one of our attendees, Joshua, wonders if the current situation with respect to inventory levels sort of paints a false picture of what's going on because of mortgage forbearance. In particular, he suggests that people might normally be in foreclosure, and the fact that they're being allowed to stay in their homes might make supply levels look a little bit tighter than they actually are. So if, I don't know if any of our panelists, George, Karen, and Renee, have any thoughts on that.
I think Renee mentioned in her opening comments that, the level of nationally, particularly in, not custom underwritten mortgages, that that those CARES Act provisions have been effective in stalling or postponing the foreclosure process. I can just tell you at the bank, that hasn't, knock on wood, hasn't been an issue for us in the type of lending that we do in our for our portfolio. But Karen, I think you touched on it in your comments in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's different lending in half of the county, the FHA and all, VA, it's very prominent in North County. And of course, it's a concern. I mean, if they stopped, nobody knows, but if they stopped the forbearance program in 6 months from now and rates started to go up and people weren't back to work, we'd probably see foreclosures. And if we saw a lot of foreclosures, they'd become comps and it could, bring prices down. But I think the whole equity thing makes it a little bit safer. We do have a lot more equity and people aren't going to walk away from, the equity as they didn't have in the last downturn in the market in 2010. So it's different.
Yeah.
Don't you agree, Peter?
A second point, though, maybe most of you probably saw what the Fed did yesterday. They basically said they're going to keep interest rates close to zero for another couple of years. Of course, that doesn't mean they're going to do it. It means that unless something happens that goes crazy, the interest rates are going to stay low, and so obviously that's a big factor in home purchases.
I would say that for us, we typically know if a seller is selling because they can't afford it anymore. So there's a few of those, and if you're smart and you have equity, like Karen said, you should sell and get out from under it. But primarily we're seeing people going from this house to that house, and not not going from selling this house and going into a rental. Or if they're leaving town, they're buying outside of town. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But it's like my bank, I was telling the group, my bank sends me an email every other day and says, oh, you can still have forbearance. It's almost, over. And so, a lot of people, I think, went, oh, sure, why not? After a while, I'll just hold off and pay later and, whatever. But I think the banks were aggressive in that way, sending people notices.
Okay, Charlie, maybe one last question.
Sure. So, Peter, your little comment about the Federal Reserve is sort of a good segue. And so I will direct this last question to our resident economist. So do we have any idea what might happen with the real estate market and home buyers or renters if we see no additional stimulus from the federal government? And related, if, for example, eviction moratoriums go away permanently, do you have any idea what we might expect here in Santa Barbara County?
Well, yeah, it's a hard question, of course. I think that, you know, if there's no more stimulus, you know, I'm not sure how much that affects Santa Barbara County, especially in the south, maybe in the north, Renee, you know, Karen would know that. I don't think that has much of an effect here in terms of, you know, adding money to people's accounts or forbearance. I think that, you know, it's much more about the underlying structure, you know, rather than temporary programs that drive people to purchase homes. So I don't think that's going to matter very much. I don't see it on the horizon affecting home purchases, but maybe Renee and Karen see something there.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think that, again, you know, whoever received a forbearance at this point in time, you know, they're going to figure out a way to pay it back and not, you know, have to lose their home, or they'll sell their home and they'll probably make a profit. So,
You know, it's so hard to tell because you
Yeah.
wonder how many people are taking advantage of the letter, as Renee said, that you get offering the forbearance. Just as Harry Hagan states, there was less than 1% who were delinquent on their property taxes that just didn't pay. But there were 1,000 people that took up the waiver, whether they need it or not. I mean, you know, you're taking advantage of an offer. And I mean, I know there's people that aren't looking for work and they're still on unemployment, and there are people that are looking to hire people, but people are still on unemployment.
right.
It's kind of that same old, yeah. Anyway.
Okay, I think I want to be somewhat respectful of people's time, even though we're over. Again, I want to thank our all the panelists, Karen, Renee, George, thank you so much. And thank you, Charlie, for
you.
doing that. And Fatima, thank you very much again. This will be recorded and put on our website. So anyway, thanks for all the attendees for showing up. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.